Love is Blind Season 4 live reunion was difficult to watch for several reasons, including the mistreatment of Micah Lucier. While Micah was poised to be the season's villain in the early episodes, she ultimately changed her tune throughout her time on the show. When she was left at the altar by her fiancé Paul Peden, Micah was blindsided and left to pick up the pieces of her broken relationship. Micah had a tough time at the reunion when she was put under a microscope and asked to answer for her, at times, difficult behavior. Early in the pod phase, Micah and Kwame Appiah flirted with the idea of a relationship. It seemed much deeper than it was on the show, but after the pair broke up and got engaged to their respective partners, Micah and Kwame had a few conversations about their past relationship that were caught on camera. Audiences were put off by Micah's behavior, considering they were engaged to different people. Ultimately, the scenes between Micah and Kwame were revealed to be orchestrated by the Love is Blind production team during the reunion, making it even more clear that Micah's treatment through the season and the reunion was more harsh than necessary. Micah Kwame's relationship was rehashed unnecessarily, though it was a big part of the early Love is Blind Season 4 episodes. Micah and Kwame's relationship ended long before the pod phase was over. After both singles got engaged and traveled to Mexico with their partners, they finally met face to face and had the opportunity to discuss their failed relationship. While both still felt connected to one another, it was clear that they were both more interested in their current partners. Micah seemed to continue seeking Kwame out throughout the season whenever there were larger group scenes, but this was addressed during the reunion head-on. Though host Vanessa Lachey continually brought things up about Kwame to Micah, it was clear that Micah, Kwame, and his wife, Chelsea Griffin, no longer wanted to discuss the ordeal. While Chelsea shut things down to the best of her ability, Micah made it clear that anything that happened between herself and Kwame after their time in the pods was orchestrated by the Love is Blind production team. Regardless of how uncomfortable it was to talk about, Vanessa wouldn't let up on their conversations until Micah finally strongly asserted that her connection with Kwame doesn't matter now that he is married to Chelsea. Micah was asked to explain her mean behavior. Micah's behavior early in the pod phase was unsavory at best, as Micah was often called a mean girl along with her close Love is Blind friend Irina Solomonova. While Micah has publicly apologized for her behavior and, after getting engaged, seemed to improve socially, she was still made to answer for her actions during the reunion. It was clear that Micah was remorseful for what she did early in the season, making fun of other women and talking behind their backs with Irina. Vanessa was still tough on Micah, who seemed to genuinely feel uncomfortable having to relive some of her worst moments over again. Micah had to relive her ex-fiancé's criticisms. Micah knew about her Love is Blind outcome before the rest of the world did, but there were pieces of the show she found out about as they aired along with the public. During the finale, after being asked about why he left her at the altar, Micah's former fiancé Paul explained that he didn't feel she would make a good mother. He said she didn't seem nurturing, shrugging this off during an interview segment after the failed wedding. Micah, who watched the finale when it aired on April 14, had only 2 days to sit with this before the reunion. While she understood the reasons Paul had for deciding not to marry her on their wedding day, it was clear that the idea she wouldn't make a good mom was news to Micah when it was brought up during the reunion. Tearfully, Micah said she had no idea that Paul felt that way, and he agreed that it was not something he'd mentioned previously. Shockingly, The pair revealed at the reunion that they tried to date after the show finished filming, but their relationship ultimately did not work out. When Micah asked Paul about his statement, he seemed to casually shrug it off, explaining that he would never ask someone to change in such a fundamental way. This, too, was hurtful to Micah, who couldn't fathom that Paul would say something so hurtful to the cameras but not to her face. She said they'd spoken about kids several times and that Paul knew how badly she wanted to have a family of her own, which is why she felt so floored by the news. The fact that Micah had to hear Paul's comments along with the public and face them with barely any recovery time seemed cruel and unusual. Micah was the only cast member to have to deal with real-time criticism. The other Love is Blind cast members have had time and space to process what happened to them on the show, dealing with tough spots in their relationships and the fallout of the show after filming. Micah, on the other hand, was really the only person to have to deal with personal criticism in real time. There were only 2 days before the reunion for the cast to regroup from the finale hitting Netflix, showing their weddings or lack thereof. With the other couples on Love is Blind Season 4 getting married successfully and staying together, there was a bright light shining on Micah and Paul's failure. With Micah having only a few days to recover from the shock of what Paul said about her when she already knew she was going to be villainized at the reunion, she had a lot on her plate. Additionally, she likely had to mentally prepare to see her ex for the first time in close to a year, which was a whole different sort of stress for the Love is Blind star. Knowing all that Shed dealt with, it was difficult to see the hosts keep the spotlight on Micah and hound her for her actions and reactions, knowing what Shed been through.
Love in the modern world is fake when love was meant for joy to